And so, it's time for another bloopers video. I'm putting this out now because my next car review is a big one. Since it'll be my 10th review in the game, I wanted to make a mega review special of sorts. Without spoiling what it is, let's move on. The Supersnake was an interesting video to make. There are more bloopers than the TT, surprisingly, because I moved from the PS4 to PS5, so I have much more time to talk about the car. And of course, more time to talk equals more chances for me to not speak English correctly apparently. Because the next review is so long, I might put out another blooper episode before the big special comes out. As always, I hope you enjoyed these bloopers, and comment which one was your favorite, because I think there's a lot of really good ones in this one. Something about the Mustang just screams freedom every time that you talk about it, and this one is absolutely no exception. The Mustang Supersnake. Mustang just screams freedom every time that you talk about it, and this one is absolutely no exception. The Shelby Mustang Supersnake. It's worth mentioning though that power isn't the only thing that matters in the super tier. In a tier that's conglomerated? I don't think that's the word I want to say here. However, power isn't the only thing that matters in the super tier. In a tier that's absolutely packed, absolutely? What is it with me and absolutely today? Super tier though. In a world filled with Lamborghinis and Porsches, it really needs to stand out to be worth using. So taking that into consideration, what is a Supersnake like? Immediately noticeable is that the Supersnake is a bit difficult to drift. That massive power output, oh god damn it. Power, though, isn't the only thing that matters in the super tier. This is especially showcased in one of its featured events that also features the Lamborghini LP560-2 Valentino Balboni. That is a mouthful. I am not going through with that entire phrase. This is especially showcased in one of its featured events that also features the Lamborghini Gallardo. Okay, what do I want to say here? Because this is... I don't want to say Lamborghini Gallardo Valentino Balboni because it might be the only thing oh my god, dude. I don't want to say this is what kills the car because it's not a bad car otherwise, but the drifting physics that it has, I think, just leaves it a bit less desirable, especially compared to its main rival, the Valentino Balboni Lamborghini. That's still, oh my god, dude. I don't know. I will say, compared to some other rivals like the Panamera, which can maintain its speed very quickly and more efficiently, I will say it leaves the Mustang feeling a bit outclassed, but not in a typical sense. It's a bit interesting to talk about because it's not a bad drifting car in the usual, okay, I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't want to say that this is especially a bad point for the Supersnake, but just compared to some other rivals in the tier like the Panamera and the Gallardo Superleggera, it just feels a bit less responsive in a sense, if that does make any sense. Nope. I don't want to say that this is especially a bad point for the Supersnake, but just compared to some other cars in the tier like the Panamera, which can maintain its speed very well through corners, it leaves the Mustang feeling a bit less responsive. Did I say that already? Now I'm not even sure. Hold on. But it does leave it feeling a bit less responsive. I sure did. Like I said, it does regain its speed very quickly with nitrous after you countersteer, but it doesn't regain all that speed, and I think this is where it loses a lot of its momentum, and this is especially important in more twisty circuits. This isn't a track racing game. Like I said, it does regain its speed very quickly when countersteering, once again paired with nitrous, but it doesn't regain all of its lost speed. And I think that this is especially important for more twisty places. It's a twisty place for sure. Just for the sake of the duel, I'll quickly compare the Supersnake to the Valentino Balboni, and I'll just flat out say it, I don't think it cuts it against the Gallardo. The Gallardo's mid-engine layout helps it in more situations, especially in the drifting department, than the Mustang's front-engine layout. Layout. That's all, folks. Now, speaking of the Supersnake's acceleration, what the hell? This is another point where I think it's hard to justify using the Supersnake because it wheel spins all the way until it reaches 4th gear. And I think that this is a huge detriment to it, what the, wow. But it wheel spins faster, and it accelerates faster at the same time. It still gets going better in 4th gear, and I think this is overall a that's all, folks. Number 2. Its wheel spin is both better and worse, and I'm not quite sure how to explain this. Okay, so interceptors have the added acceleration benefit compared to racers. So it wheel spins more, but at the same time, it also gets going around the same time that the racer version does. So after 4th gear, it really starts going. What is it with me and going? The Supersnake absolutely has the wheel spin. There is no hiding that. But it gets going around the same time as the racer version does, so around 4th gear. But because of the added acceleration the cops have, it also gets going quicker, and the wheel spin is more severe at that speed, and it's strange to say this because I really don't know what the hell I'm even saying anymore. It once again finds some competition with the Gallardos in terms of handling, but I think that there is actually a much fairer comparison with the Supersnake Interceptor than the racer version, and that is the Viper, because both cars are featured in a Hot Pursuit as interceptors, obviously because we're talking about the cop version. It does also find some notable competition once again with the Gallardos. The all-wheel drive that the Gallardos have accelerate much quicker than the Supersnake's sole rear-wheel drive layout. But I think that there is also a better comparison for the Interceptor than the racer side, and that honor goes to the Viper. Now, I won't say that the Viper is the best car on the tier. Find some notable competition with the Gallardos of the tier. But thankfully, I can say that there is a much better comparison to the Supersnake in the Rapid Deployment series, and that is the Viper, because both cars are featured in the Supersnake once again finds itself being unfairly compared to The Supersnake once again finds itself being unfairly compared to the Gallardos. Why am I saying unfairly compared? I mean, they're being compared, obviously, but there's no longer a comparison because you can opt not to use the... Oh my god. Once again, the Supersnake does find itself to be compared to the Gallardos of the tier, but thankfully there is a much better comparison to the Supersnake in the Rapid Deployment series, and that is the Viper. Because you have the choice between the Supersnake and the Viper in a Hot Pursuit.
I can't speak English today.
The Supersnake Interceptor is featured in a single event in the Cop series, and you have the
Choice of this car or the Viper.
Once again, the Supersnake finds itself to be a bit overshadowed, but not by the Gallardos. It is featured in a single event alongside the Viper, and because of that, a lot of people opt to use the Viper. But that's not to say that the
Supersnake is a bad interceptor.
God! Snake once again has that quirk as an interceptor where it loses a good part of its speed in the middle of a very sharp drift. And the Viper does seem to be a better car for drifting on paper because of that better weight distribution. But I think the Supersnake is actually better for hot pursuits than the Viper, because of that added weight and the better, better something. It's not coming to me. Even though there is no direct way to compare the interceptors of the tier, I'm comparing them right now. What am I saying? Makes it a much more effective car for interceptors in hot pursuits. Even though I think the Viper is a very respectable car, I don't think it's quite as useful as the Viper ACR in the exotic tier, and I'll get more into that whenever I get around to the Viper video. But the Supersnake, I think, is a much better car for hot pursuits and interceptors. Okay, why am I saying anything about the Viper ACR when it's not even in the same tier? Ugh. However, if you can get a hold of the Supersnake's drifting physics and the added weight that makes it a bit less responsive when drifting, I think it can outperform God, brother. Just like with the racer version, I think it does take a really skilled player to bring out the best of the Supersnake Interceptor, but once it really gets going, I think it has potential to be a very capable interceptor. But I will mention that the lack of all-wheel drive compared to
some other cars in the tier.
what the hell? As I mentioned before, the Supersnake Interceptor can be used in so many more different events than the racer version can. And I think that English would be a fabulous language to learn. I'll also bring up the Interceptor's availability once again. And like I said, this is hands down a net positive for it. Because the Rapid Deployment series doesn't have as many featured events as the Super series on the Racer side. What is it with me and Racer side? I gotta stop saying Racer side for everything I'm comparing to Interceptor. Ugh. Get it together, man. And even though the Supersnake is obviously not the most used car in the tier, it is Oops. It is an option to speak English as well. And if you're having trouble with drifting, I think it's worth using this car because the added quirk and ability to countersteer with that added nitrous boost. Am I even saying the right words anymore? I don't even know.